All right, it's time for us to take a look at the dailies on Daybreak, and we have Ben Shemang, who is the director of Voice of Nigeria, in the studio to spotlight and give perspectives on the stories that made the headlines this morning. Good morning and welcome.
You're welcome.
My pleasure. You were listening.
Yes. All right, let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And on page 19 of the Daily Trust newspaper, at the very top, you would find a petrol price. Nimasa NPA flouting presidential directive, marketers are saying. And then you would also see on page 10, IGR, Lagos leads as FCT beats Rivers, Kano, 33 others. The lead story on Daily Trust's pension scam. Pensioners cheer as Maina backs 61 years imprisonment. That's a very interesting story there. You may want to find the details on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper. The riders to that act sordid, immoral, dirty. That's according to judge. Another rider says lampoons banks for aiding abating. Orders convicts to refund 2.4 billion naira, forfeit 2 houses. And below the pictorial there, you would see FG governors in fresh battle over 172 billion naira Paris Club deductions. The picture there, one of the other pictures there, shows thousands of supporters on Friday thronged the residence of Senator Muhammad Danjuma Goje in Gombe State hours after he was attacked. Yeah, we saw that viral video on social media where he was said to have been attacked by hoodlums or thoughts or whatever you may want to call them on his return to the state for a wedding. You would also see supplementary poll, Soludo Ozigbo battle for Ihiala today. Nigeria's IDPs figure to hit 3 million. That's according to the federal government. Daily Trust's golf tournament gathers momentum. These are some of the major stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper today.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the front page of Punch newspaper. Right at the top, you have a story here. Lagos tops as state's half-year IGR reaches 849.12 billion naira. And you can find more on that story on page 19. Uncertainty hangs over new PDP leadership as Secondus approaches Supreme Court. And you find details of that story on page 2. Cooking gas price jumps by 240%. Marketers halt imports. And that you can find on page 19. 2.3 billion naira theft. EFCC customs clash on custody as Maina bags 61-year imprisonment. And that is, you can find that details of that particular story on page 9. Moving on, APC PDP bank on runoff. Obi party alleged vote buying others. And then we have another story here on mobile banking. MTN Airtel market cap gains 637.12 billion naira as CBN approval looms. And then right at the bottom, we have Ikoyi collapse building subscribers signed over $500,000 contracts each. That you can find on page 20. And 40-year-old Ogun butcher arrested over lover's death after sex. And you can find that story on page 8. Kwara barred from UBEC fund over 1 billion naira looting by ex-government, says governor. That you can find on page 9. And the major story here on the front page of Punch newspaper says governors attack Malami over $418 million consultant's fee, says AGF lied. And the writers here says haste suggests a special relationship between AGF office consultant, says NGF, and state resources needed for critical development should not be frittered away. And you can find details of that story on page 2. These are all the stories we have on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
Right, on the Nation newspaper this morning, the first story you would see at the very top is on page 4. It says NDA attack, Air Force Sergeant nabbed in Yola. You'd find also Maina jailed 8 years for 2 billion naira pension theft. The rider also says to forfeit 2.1 billion naira and other houses. That's on page 28. 5G network is not hazardous, says NCC. Anambra, Soludo, Ozigbo, Uba, others battle for Ihiala. That's on page 2. And then, of course, you'd find the lead story there says, Governors Malami's role in Paris Club refund suspect. You'd see also the rider there saying, row over $418 million consultancy fee deepens. Proposed deductions hasty. Naiti to unveil 77 oil firms' status in 2.6 trillion tax arrears. At the very bottom there, you'd see on those screens 3,000 civil servants over age falsification. That's interesting. 3,000, that's a large number.
Yes, it is. All right, so on the Guardian newspaper, we have ECOWAS sustains Guinea sanctions, imposes fresh ones on Mali, and that you can find on page 3. Air Force arrests officer in connection with bandits attack on NDA. This particular story made a lot of headlines yesterday, and you can find details of that on page 2. Boko Haram attacks military base in Borno. That you can find on page 5 and on page 7. Why Imo Assembly impeached Emeziem as Speaker, installed eBay. And the lead story here is candidates upbeat as INEC concludes Anambra Guber. And we have a writer here that says, I can still win this election, says PDP's Ozigbo. APC refutes plan to drag Soludo INEC to court. INEC adjusts voting time, reruns hold 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. APC woes self-inflicted, says Nwosu. Yaga Africa demands audit of BVAs to prevent delay, voter disenfranchisement, and some collation officers not good at mathematics, says INEC director. And the final story here with the pictorial of Maina smiling says Abdurrashid Maina guilty as charged. More details of that story on page 3.
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Times newspaper this morning. At the very top there, you'd see Anambra Guber. Supplementary poll holds from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. today. That's according to INEC. The lead story says $418 million Paris Club payments. Malami working against public interest. That's according to Nigerian Governors Forum. With the riders there says AGF's actions raises questions of property, of propriety, and the spirit of justice. No violation of process, deductions from Paris Club loan refunds ratified by court judgments. That's Malami responding to that allegation. Now, it will take Nigeria 120 years to meet medical demands. That's according to Minister. Should we be concerned about that? I think that we should. It's alarming, really. That's that for stories on the Daily Times newspaper today. All
right, we'll take one final paper here, which is Daily Sun. And Anambra INEC held supplementary election in Ihiala today. A writer here says, I've not made comments on Anambra election, says Umahi. On page 26, you'd find Niger Delta Group rejects 3% to South in NNPC's 621.2 billion naira for road construction. And the lead story here says Paris Club deductions. Governors furious with Malami. Accuse AGF of working against Nigeria's interest. Looted assets. We've recorded appreciable milestones, says Justice Minister. And that story you can find on page 5 and 6. And we also have this story here that says collapsed building. Lagos Assembly seeks compensation for bereaved families. 2.1 billion naira. Court jails Maina 8 years. On page 26, you find Obasanjo, Sultan, others raise the alarm over failing education. On page 6, you'd find the story that says Nigeria facing new dimensions of threats, says Defense Minister. And Kalu, passionate about Nigeria's unity, Lowen tells northern governors, monarchs, and that you can find on page 28. And at the footer of the front page of Daily Sun newspaper, you find drama in Imo as lawmakers impeach speaker, reinstates sacked deputy on page 28.
Quite interesting stories on the front pages this morning. Again, let's welcome our reviewer, the newspaper review for today, Ben Shemang, who is a director at Voice of Nigeria. Let's begin with the story on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper about the pension scam. Pensioners chair as Maina backs 61 years imprisonment. Would you say that justice has been served?
Honestly, justice has been sealed, packed, and delivered. Because if you look at the way pensioners are suffering, it's that serious. Here you are, a worker who has put in 35 years in service. Now, how do we make life better for them? So, okay, let's go into contributory pension. From your salary, something is taken there, government sends up a percentage, and it is safe for you, waiting for that rainy day. So things went bizarre. Maina was brought in as a savior. Suddenly, Maina became a mole. He was rather helping himself. So justice has been served. And if you even look at what we call this contributory pension, Ayuba, you see, some guys will work for 35 years and now you have 20 million, you have 50 million as you are retiring. But you don't have a house. But you have money kept for you somewhere. It's expected that 2 years to the end of your service, you can borrow from that your same money. But the law will say no. You know, so some of these things would need some amendments here and there to enable pensioners to always smile. And that's why check their lifespan, so short, they die easily because houses are just not there. Many of them who indeed choose to be very, very good public servants. So that has to be looked at. Apart from that, you also see the corrupt nature in which these pension funds have been handled. And you just see pension administrators, some of these companies, as much as they use your money, they are told don't touch the principal, but they use it in trading and you can't borrow from it. It is just not right. And sometimes when they've had enough trading with your money, they transfer you to another company. Just like that. You know the way you play football. Tap here, turn to the left, play to the other, and you pass on. So the circle continues.
And one thing's about the role of commercial banks in this. We have a writer saying the judge is criticizing banks for aiding and abetting. What are we not doing to make sure that banks do not become partners in crime?
That's where you have the Finance Intelligence Unit. They used to work with EFCC, but the law was separated, so they all are different entities. What it entails is that Ayuba, if you go there and withdraw as an individual 1 million naira, your name will have to be sent to EFCC under close focus. If a Daily Trust, for example, goes to deposit 5 million or withdraws 5 million, of course that is under focus, so that you track the transactions of money. It therefore follows that this money is not cash, it's not liquid. I mean, it's there in its form. It's not as if it is transferred using the internet. Even if it is transferred, I mean, someone somewhere is responsible, the banking industry. Monies are kept in the banks. So it follows that it takes two to tangle. If somebody's money was stolen and another one was given to keep, that is a thief. If somebody's money is with you and you edit, it's taken away, you are also culpable. So the law should be looked at. The judge, I expect that whatever the laws of finance intelligence unit are, they should look at that aspect. Shouldn't the banks be held culpable? Shouldn't the banks be responsible for some of these anomalies, these criminalities that are rocking Nigeria and sending some Nigerians into the early graves? I think it should be done.
But what's the possibility of these pensioners actually getting their monies back? Because we have a rider that says the court had ordered convicts to refund 2.4 billion naira and forfeit houses. And we've seen cases where people and companies have been asked by courts to, refund debts, and, nothing has happened.
Yeah, you see, sometimes you have what you call bad debt. I mean, someone owes you. He's so sick now, and you want him to pay. When that man is trying to even survive, that is one. Someone owes you his debt. How you want to recover? How do you recover it? And sometimes some of these people get these loans. They don't invest in an industry that you can go and say, okay, if this industry or company was the guarantor, or is the guarantee that if I fail, you grab this company. They don't invest in some of these things. They go into social activities. You carry your people to go to holy pilgrimage here and there. You carry your people for weddings here and there. So such money that disappear just like the vapor or a candle in the air. How do you recoup? How do you pay these people? Look at the house that just collapsed in Ikoyi. You say pay compensation. The man who owns the house is also dead there. And how do you recoup that? Who are you going to sue now? Except if there is a company that survives, or that is that is also a legal person when it comes to legality. It means that company can be liable. But if this man is a sole entity in this business, now he is gone. How do you recoup? How do you pay all of this? Materials have been bought. Materials have been assembled. Architects were all involved. And you could see that now, look, everything is now gone down the drain, down a very deep ditch. So it's not going to be easy. However, if you do get some, you have when you have administrators being appointed for companies, if you are winding up, you can no longer perform according to the laws establishing you. You do have a government agency that will ensure you wind up. But sometimes these people will sit and sit for how many weeks, how many months, and are claiming what you call sitting allowances from these same people's money. And that's different from their own salaries. So it's a gamut of too many bad things that need corrections. Hussein.
All right, now we need to see more, of course, when it comes to dealing with corruption in the sector. We've had cases where, in the name of verifications, things are made more difficult for these pensioners, and in the process, some of them are even claimed to have died, as outcome of the, verification. And then when you investigate, you find out that they are not dead, they are alive. But the process is made much difficult, for some of them. What can we do about that?
Yes, sometimes we need honesty. Why is it that people that we know are dead, we still pay them in court? You collect this money and share behind the scene. It's a thing that should be corrected. And when young people are in charge, 2 years, 3 years graduates, they're working. Now you have this old man who retired how many years ago? Say, Baba, go and bring your letter of first appointment, letter of last promotion. The man does not have many of these things any longer. Does it make it a nullity that it does not exist? That the paper does not, the appointment letter is no longer there with him, and he is there, it's confirmed, look at his file, it's available. Why do you make these people suffer? And sometimes this verification, they say you're going to do it according to zones. Someone is in Maiduguri, he's going to Bauchi to do verification. You can imagine the distance. Someone is in Sokoto, he's going to Kaduna to go do verification, because they are now doing it according to zones. Look, in as much as we've gone into what is called e-governance, we should be able to click a file and this man's details will just come up. instead of all. If you say bring your letter of first appointment, what happened to the photocopy that was kept in the file? So we should be looking at some of these things. And every year, I tell you, Ayuba, every year we face what is called constant verification, constant revalidation. Are you still in service and all that stuff? Then you also have the age cheats. People who just continue, look, they continue to change their age verification, declaration of age. And that's why today I like what is happening. When you enter university, right from JAM, your age is reflected. You move to university, your age is reflected. You go to university, your age is reflected. Your job, everything is not. So it means sanity is coming along the line. But again, we should begin to take conscience, as a serious matter in this country.
Yeah. One of the stories, now that you mentioned issues of age, like in Ondo State, we are seeing that the state is screening 3,000 civil servants over age falsification. This is, more like becoming a norm in the civil service. People do all of that. How can we make things less difficult for ourselves?
Yes, and that is why right from the school, we should take this birth certificate seriously. If you don't have, the court is there for you. You do your declaration of age. And school administration ensure that every stage, if a child enters a school, make sure that it enters that school at so age. If you are exiting, you exited, you're giving a testimonial, you exited there at the age of this. You go to any other school, if you are picking a job, you're using credentials that have all this kind of thing. And for God's sake, let us just stop, just cheating. You want to remain in service. Now, you see an old man, you have grandchildren, these children want to enter the service and work, but you are still occupying their tomorrow. Keep on telling us children are leaders of tomorrow, but you keep on occupying and spending their tomorrow. It doesn't go well at all.
Well, I actually know this is not a trending topic anymore, but what is your take on the government borrowing from pensions?
That's a very serious matter. Look, by December next year, I'll be quitting civil service. I'll be 60 years, for example. But my fear now is we're hearing that government wants to borrow from our own money. We pensioners, we contributed, and the money is in trillions. Now government wants to borrow. They say you want to borrow for infrastructure, to make the roads, to make railway, to give us hospitals. They are good, but we are concerned as to when you are retiring and your money is just not there, you also need it to take care of yourself as an individual. But government has borrowed to ensure that it gives public a utility. And now, you said you are making the roads. Is this same road back to my village there? It is not there. So it's a whole big thing that I think that pensioners should just be left with their money. The money should be meant for them, should just be for them and not just borrow. If the government is defeated, for example, who says that the incoming government will see it as a priority and pay these civil servants? Some people will even come and say, oh, it's part of the social responsibility. Government has been helping many other people. You were in government, you were fortunate, you were paid constantly. What about those who are in the farmers and other? So we've made the roads so that they can also enjoy the way you enjoy the government. It's a thing that has plus minus. But if honestly they're going to pay, fine. But if they are not, it's going to be a very big problem. And you can see, I see that government is planning to do some restructuring of even agencies, merge, demerge, and scrap some. And you can imagine how many people will be sent into the unemployment market. And also politically, we are going to face election period by next year. Will it be the correct period for a sitting government to engage in all of these things? After all, government really is not about profit making. It's about incomes and expenditure. You expend money for the welfare of people. If government wants to go into commercial ventures, you set up agencies or you just make the environment conducive for business to strive.
All right. Okay, now another story that dominated the front pages of our newspapers today is about the back and forth between the Minister of Justice and the Governors Forum, about the Paris Club refund. There's a whole lot of suspicion, about the repayment of $418 million consultancy fee and all of that. Isn't it time for us to, lay this matter to rest? And why has it continued to resurface?
It has continued to linger because it has not been resolved. And the manner and way in which it is handled is not the best way. If this money, yes, belongs to the state governments, but the federal government will have to, kind of by way of holding, sway to it when it comes to the law itself. Why will you, if this money belongs to the local governments and the state governments combined, now you want to take money from this money and pay contractors and pay consultants when indeed the money belongs to this state government? That's where the bone of contention is. What does the law say? And before the minister had gone into all of this, there ought to be what you call public awareness. You sit down with these governors. There's the governors forum, all of them. We're not talking of forums according to local to political parties. We're talking of the entire governors. You sit down. Come on, this money is on ground. This is the figure. Each state, this is yours. But we have these obligations to be made. And how do we make it? Is the federal government going to pay, or make some deductions from here and pay? If it's not done that way and you think you can ambush them, then you have this kind of contention. And of course, that will just hit up the polity. When in this, with small sitting round the table, this will be resolved.
Do you agree with the Justice Minister when he said we have recorded appreciable milestone with the looted assets?
Well, that's another thing because we've seen accusations going on, like when the immediate past chairman of EFCC was there. Yes, property were received from criminals, and suddenly we were hearing that they've been sold to even their friends, to themselves, and all that stuff. Yes, it is one thing to grab them, recover them, but where are they today? We should be able to say, okay, this property was grabbed from so person, and I think a list should be brought so that Nigerians can see. And if there are, agencies of government that are higher, being accommodated in rented apartments, private property, I think government should simply allocate some of this, because these are also conduit pipes. Ayuba has a property, EFCC chairman, I begin to patronize Ayuba, and now we have an office there, that kind of thing. I think that, yes, they could make appreciable kind of seizures here and there, but we should see many of these things on ground. It's the truth. And if it's been sold, how was it that it was sold? Just this thing that the Hausa man will call Ayugonjo is just giveaway prices for properties that are in choice areas and all that. They are so costly. And if therefore they use public funds in purchasing or building or corruptly enriching themselves, then that should be it. So we should know, yes, landed property, where are they? If we're talking of money, where is it? And quite a lot of many other things.
All right, now let's talk about the Anambra election. It's also another issue that we are still seeing fallout from that election. There's supposed to be a supplementary election today in Ihiala and all of that. What have we seen, as far as the outcome of that election, and what's your thoughts about how much progress we've made with respect to that?
Honestly, first of all, we start with the peaceful conduct of the election. I've not heard of killings the way some people prophesied. It's going to be bloodbath. It's going to be bloodletting. Corpses will be all over. Human remains will be here and there. And we've not seen it. That is a good thing. We've also seen that INEC is living up to some of its expectations. However, there are still issues. Why is it that there's this recurring decimal arrival of materials very late? sensitive and non-sensitive. And one other thing is this use of a National Union of Road Transport Workers to ferry or carry some of these electoral materials. It's not once, it's not twice. That at the 11th hour, gentlemen, they said they have reneged. They are no longer interested in carrying your materials. And that's why you have some of these things. And sometimes you also have the terrain. Some of these riverine areas, for example, even though Anambra is not too riverine, but again, there are peculiar environments that will cause some kind of delays. Then you also look at the machine being used. Why is it that they fail easily? And we have not still overcome that. I think when you do an election, it's like a newsroom. For example, Daily Trust today, I'm sure the editors will sit down, the board will sit down and do a review, post-mortem of what happened yesterday. Okay, did we commit any wrong? Is there a place someone is complaining? Okay, how many papers did we publish? How many did we sell? And all that. So tomorrow, let's see what happens. So you plan for tomorrow. And INEC should borrow the same thing. You've conducted staggered elections, like some of like this one, Kogi, Shung, and Ondo, and all that. We should learn from many of these things so that they will enable us face the general election proper. So some of these things, yes, and I can see that there was no too much of head speeches when it came to the gubernatorial candidates. There was no mudslinging, name calling, and encouraging violence here and there. And neither will you see what you call the vigilantes for such candidate and such candidate appearing to clash here and there, as we saw the case in Gombe. Inua, the governor, and Danjuma Goje, you can see them clashing. And sometimes when you have godson, godfather, when it comes to politics, I sponsor you, you'll be governor. Okay, you are the governor. Now, the governor who sponsored you will still want to hold the steering. Turn you here, turn you there. I know that. And that's where you have many of this crisis. The governor comes on board. He now feels, no, I'm no longer a political son. This is my godfather politically. I think I have my independence, kind of. And that's why things will not go down well. But congrats to FCT. We are hearing that in terms of internally generated revenue, it is now next to Lagos. Those days we hear Lagos, the commercial nerve center of Nigeria. Yes, it is. Abuja is a civil service town. Now, civil service versus business, you're saying Abuja coming. Thanks to infrastructures coming on board. And I want the government to simply also, the railway that is within Abuja, just buy some coaches and let people use. That will increase the GDP, and let Nigerians, who send up probably an Ayuba, can buy coaches, buy trains, and roll them on the tracks. So that government will administer that and will get money and employment.
Okay, well, on Guardian newspaper, there's actually a writer here that says some coalition officers not good at mathematics, and this is from the INEC director. Now, do you sense an accusation of inconsistency when it comes to vote counting here?
Yeah, I wouldn't say inconsistency. They could be consistent. But you see, it's not easy to present figures. Some guys are just good in letters. Some are very good in figures. And if you carry a man who indeed is good in literature, good in English language, he doesn't go into research, presentation, facts and figures, statistics, informatics and all that, honestly, you have a problem. But when you bring in the mathematician, the geographer, the sociologist, these people who indeed would do research, bring facts and figures, and spread them according to either years, spread them according to ages, spread them according to areas, and of course you now sum the total there you present to public. You see, facts when you are talking of figures, sometimes they tend to be very, very accurate. But when it comes to statements, statements could be interpreted in very many ways. So what are we trying to say? I think that the INEC chairman is actually saying the truth. The INEC official is saying the truth. Some of the people who are in charge of this election are not figure inclined. Therefore, they find it hard to handle figures of this nature.
But should we really be dealing with this kind of situation in the advent of technology and all of that we have? Should we be having to write numbers, results, with hand and all of that?
Yeah, even when you have the equipment technologically to assist you, you still have to be figure inclined to do many of those things. Therefore, instead of the long writing, you can as well do use your computer, you can use your laptop, laptop, you can use your desktop to do all of these things. And after all, if you do it longhand, how do you handle it? We're talking of a situation where we're most likely going to be using e-transmission of electricity and election results. If it's therefore going to be e-transmission, it follows that physical and manual handling of papers, sheets with figures will not be there. So it is an early warning signal. Thank God they've identified it. It's for them to begin to recruit people who indeed are figure inclined, mathematics inclined, statistics inclined, so that we don't have some of these teething problems any longer.
All right, let's move on to another story here that says the federal government is saying that Nigeria's IDP figures set to hit 3 million.
That is serious. Look at the population of many states, Bayelsa, for example. Look at populations of, you just realize that, in other words, IDPs alone,
like a state now.
They are like a state. Just like when we're talking of out-of-school syndrome. In the north alone, about 10 million. How many states have the population of 10 million in Nigeria? So if IDPs are actually reaching that level, it's a serious problem. And now we're having Boko Haram guys surrendering. As at yesterday, around 18,000. The military is becoming overwhelmed with this. How do you manage them? You send them to IDPs, you send them to communities. It's a big problem. So if you say go to IDPs, do you go and mingle with civilians there? Babies, children, small girls? What happens? Child abuse here and there? It's a big thing that people should look out for. And that's why the government is also saying, look, come December, I've forgotten the date, we're going to shut down all IDP camps. And if you look at the scam that is also there, Governor Zulum, at the point, around 1 a.m., just took a drive to one of the camps, or two of the camps, one single night. In fact, what he saw, though he said, call everybody, there's relief. People came out. What did he see? Just about a quarter of the people registered in that place. But in the daytime, you see people trooping back to go and receive relief materials. So why is it that, there's this idiomatic expression, fishing in troubled waters. That it is when there's a situation that is bad that some people cash in, get advantages and smile to the banks. Why will you just go there and start collecting relief materials and you take them to market? Dangote will send in how many tons of rice. In the end, you go and see them in the market and he gave them free. And so why should this continue? If therefore some people feel that they could be fed better in IDP camps, then why do I go to farm? Why do I go to work? When indeed I can get my beans, I can get palm oil, I can get every ingredient I need.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. And we have Ben Shemang, Director, Voice of Nigeria, reviewing the top stories with us, stories that made the headlines on our newspapers this morning. And now, one other concern, the issue of should I call it fuel scarcity now? Because it doesn't seem to me like it's scarcity. It's hoarding rather.
Hoarding, yeah.
I'd rather say many fueling stations, not just in Abuja but in other parts of the country as well. Having to shut down their filling stations. People are now stranded. Getting fuel now is becoming more difficult, and even transport fares is beginning to hike and all of that. Why do we have to go through this virtually? It's becoming like a ritual. Why do we have to experience this almost every end of the year?
Honestly, it beats one's imagination that in Africa, we are number one when it comes to crude oil supply in Africa. And as a OPEC member country, we are number 7. And with all of this, we still have this problem of fuel scarcity. A rumor mongering, believing country, let me call it this way. Sometimes we'll strive so much and believe a rumor. In Abuja, on a Friday evening, if you check, queues were just gathering here and there. They said, they are going to increase pump price of fuel. I mean, who is sending all of these messages? It's we are so much a nation that believes in this kind of rumors. But again, government should do what is always in their purview, what they call the turnaround maintenance of refineries. If Kaduna Petrochemical is working very well at an optimal level, I mean, this scarcity would be less. You go to Warri, you go to Port Harcourt, if they all are working, you will have it in a very minimal way. But a situation where, at the point, as it was alleged, said instead of us refining what we even import, at the point it sounds like trade by barter, as alleged. You take crude and you give some foreign companies, they give you in return refined petrol. And if that is the case, of course, many things have been lost. Your engine oil is gone because you've given crude. Your insecticide is gone. Quite a lot of derivatives from crude oil, they all are gone because of trade by barter. It shouldn't be the thing. And if you look at the way the refining aspect is even done, where are these experts? Where are they? When you had Chiyoda came in to establish the petrochemical company in Kaduna. That was during Shagari's time. And Chiyoda is Japanese. If, therefore, your equipment go bad, is Chiyoda still in existence? Are they still, manufacturing the same equipment you now use? As some of these things, we have problems. Even in broadcasting, for example, you realize that what you use as transmitters, you go to buy again, those guys have moved forward. They've brought modern things. And therefore, you are still talking of them coming to repair old one. They say, boy, those who are repairing those things, they all are dead. They all are gone. We don't have even the corpse, what we use to manufacture them. So the refinery should just work. Let's have turnaround maintenance. And some people are already making a hype against around Dangote refinery. Dangote, yes, will come there and make his business and make his money. NNPC is again rushing to also have a stake there. Maybe they said 20% or 30% in Dangote refinery. And so, will the management of a refinery move to enter Dangote refinery with this kind of, I don't want to call it abysmal performance, but we still need to overcome this kind of a thing.
Okay.
All right. So we have marketers, accusing NIMASA and Nigerian Ports Authority of flouting the president's presidential directive that's receiving freight charges in dollars instead of naira. And then you also have NIMASA defending themselves, saying there was no such directive.
And that is where the National Assembly must come in. Oversight function. Now, it's like some schools in Nigeria here, you go to pay naira, they say no, pay in dollars. And the Ministry of Education is just folding its arms. And committees on education, either Senate or House of Reps, they're folding their arms to look at that kind of a thing. Now, if federal government is standing this way, NIMASA is a government agency. Therefore, it follows that if government says, don't pay in hard currency, how will you in Nigeria here, you buy a commodity in Nigeria here, you have to use hard currency? It doesn't add up. It also says a lot when it comes to the value of the naira. If you underrate your currency, even by way of appreciation, I mean, when we were doing economics at the O level, they say, what are the qualities of money? Durability, exchangeability, acceptability. This issue of acceptability. So why is it being rejected at this point? If, therefore, there are counter accusations as to who is doing what or not doing what, it is time for those who are in charge of oversight function to visit that place unannounced, and you see what is happening. If you check today, in terms of import, because Benin Republic sees that, see how much the quantity of rice they all were importing. What's the population of Benin Republic? They imported that rice because they knew the market is in Nigeria. They just bring it in, only for the government of Nigeria to block all of that. Now, Benin Republic has realized they've lost money. What will they do in return? Every tanker in Nigeria, every trailer, this is the amount they'll now pay in order to pass through Benin Republic to come to Nigeria. And if that is the case, it follows that we have to do something about our deep sea port. Our ports are a bit too shallow. And that's why Benin Republic realized the flaw, the mistake, the inadequacy of the Nigerian ports, and they went into deep sea. Very big ships cannot come to Nigeria. Ships cannot come to Nigeria. And that's why they go to Benin Republic. And we go to evacuate materials meant for Nigeria. Benin Republic will tax us, tax, chop us. Then we come in here. And by the time you look at what you've paid over there, what you are paying here, of course the prices, no trailer goes into business in order to fail, in order to not to make money. So when you do all these payments, you calculate here and there, of course inflation will come in.
Now there's also another problem of, smuggling this fuel, outside of Nigeria. And the fuel is heavily subsidized by the federal government of Nigeria, but is sold higher, much higher in our neighboring countries. And so you find smugglers taking this fuel out, to go sell them there and all of that. Would you say that we are doing very well in terms of making sure that this does not happen?
No, we are not doing very well to ensure that this does not happen. Ayuba, look at how porous, how many thousands of kilometers of the international boundary between Nigeria and its contiguous nations. And petrol across Nigeria, very high, very, very high, this for sure. And if you also check at pump price per liter globally, that of Nigeria actually tends to be down there, very low, kind of. Therefore, when it comes to, just like you want to drink a cup of water, this swan water you see, how much does it take to refine it?
It's been 2 days since.
Then how much is it sold outside? So you see that government is actually refining. But back home, we should be able to have this commodity available. And so when people are just ferrying them across the borders, at the point you shut down the borders, and you now say you've banned the sales of refined oil, fuel from a so kilometer to the boundary to the next country, yet you find them passing. And some of these, in fact, if you go to many of these areas, at the point you enter another country without realizing you've already entered, you have to use some theodolites, you have to use some equipment to know you've already entered another country. And the roads sometimes, you see them very sandy. Sometimes you don't follow the conventional roads, therefore you can just cross over. And that's why when the customs said they were going to use helicopters, monitor up there and see what is happening. We still have not seen that due to this lack of funds. So there has to be appropriation and, again, back to the lawmakers. They have standing committees. They have committees who indeed are in charge of oversighting. When money is appropriated, they know how much and for what's up ahead, they know. Now let's go and confirm this money has reached you. What has been done with it?
Now with the coming of this PIA, the Petroleum Industry Act, the PPPRA is going to be sort of scrapped now. You have new regulatory commissions coming on board. And we know that the PPRA plays that role of making sure that regulations as far as petroleum is concerned is observed and adhered to at all times. In fact, you find them going to filling stations in times like this, shutting down, some of them and all of that. What happens in this instance now?
You see, all you need to do is to copy paste. It is done in the computer world, the ICT world. What happened to NEPA? When you said you have unbundled. Unbundled implies you break NEPA into companies. GenCos, generating companies. These are the ones that will generate this electricity. Then you have the DISCOs, distribution company. This one will distribute the light. Then you now have those who will sell this commodity in our offices, in our houses, in our streets, and all that stuff. But again, an agency was created to regulate the conduct here. All we see is they just wake up one day. Oh, the law says we can increase the consumption of light per unit. Now, borrow that and come to the oil industry. PPPRA, as I usually call them, they all have been unbundled. Therefore, regulating agencies, again, are on ground. So if they are on ground, are they doing their jobs? Because people just sit down in offices with big ties, enjoy their ACs, collect allowances, and they are promoted over increase on prices of pump prices of petrol. It shouldn't be. Let us simply make the system work. Let's have the refineries work. In as much as these refineries are not working, and you just have some agencies, they realize that it costs them so much to import. Of course, the regulatory agency will simply say, okay, add this amount, and they add it. If you now say, okay, by 2022, we're not going to have anything to do with handling of petroleum, for example. What do you do with the refineries? You want to sell them? You want to commercialize them? Do you sell them at the stage in which they are? You sell them at a very big loss. And the person who will buy them will have to do a lot of refurbishing. And in doing refurbishing, he has to bring experts. And these experts are coming from abroad. Change this, change that, at what price? And all of that will have a circle coming back to the consumer, the Nigerian. And you can imagine the boomeranging effect. It's a circle. It follows that if you bought this company at a high price, you brought experts, high price, you paid this money, and now it is working. Therefore, for you to make profit, not to break even, you have to make profit. You are there to make profit. Therefore, the effect will have to go to the public. And at that point, new government says, oh boy, we have washed our hands of this. It now means the consumer has been hijacked. It's at the mercy of the owners of the refineries.
Okay, let's move on to, I'm going to link two stories. In the wake of Boko Haram surrendering, there's still attacks by them, especially this recent one on a military base in Borno. And then I want to link it with the officer that was arrested in connection with the bandits' attack, at NDA.
Yes, the sergeant arrested is Sergeant Solomon. And he's based in Yola. But how did he connect with these bandits? And if it is so, and it is true, it means intelligence is at work. You can imagine the distance between Yola and Kaduna. You did all of this. And usually that's what you call a mole. A mole is someone who works in the system. He's like a spy for an enemy. everything, every work plan that has been done, every scheming that has been done to rout, to overcome the opponent. Therefore, the mole will now tell the opponent, this is it. And that's what is called moonlighting in spy business. And so some of them are actually, now, if a thorough investigation, questioning is done, you look at the unit in which he works. Are there files? Is he in communications department? I mean, does he link up between operations, those in the field? Does it link up? I mean, usually it's not just the generals. There are also small people. I mean, when you have a president, for example, is there no tailor for the driver, for a tailor, driver, cook for the president? So if you have generals, it follows that even privates are there. Each one has a duty. But again, so who is revealing what? So it's a big thing. They look at the telephones, you grab telephones, check. In fact, the law at this point will allow the security agencies to break into his communication, take messages. Even if you delete here, it's still in the system, depending on who your service provider is. And coming to Boko Haram, still attacking a military base, you see the frequency has reduced, honestly. It has. I remember when General Buratai was still Chief of Army Staff. At the point he said, look, Boko Haram, the way it is so scattered there in tatters. But fear what is coming later on. And there's going to be ISWAP, Islamic State for West African province. And they are getting trained in some unoccupied spaces, what you call the Sahel or Sahelian region. Upon Mali, Senegal up there, Niger up there, up to Algeria, Mauritania, Libya. You see, that angle, that circle there is unoccupied. There's no government presence anywhere. So these people have already learned the antics of Osama bin Laden, living in the mountains, living in caves, staying without food, you know, and they can strike when they want. And that was where they got their training and they moved in. We expect that what we call African Council of Defense Ministers, they have it. These are things they should always come together, work in unison. And of course, even the Arab League, they should also work with these people, because this unoccupied space is in Africa. And when ISIS was rooted in Syria, of course they said the next target will be in Africa. And this is what we are seeing. When the military sounded this warning, the political class did not take it serious. And that is what we are seeing today. So we should be able, when the military is saying they are running short of equipment, it is real. If you import peaceful, I mean, bullets, for example, every bullet fired, dollars are going. And the moment they are going, you begin to sound, we are running short of so thing. It's for you. We are not, making them. Therefore, we have to import. The contractors will also come in. And who are these contractors? Politicians. So that's what we call the war economy, or the economy of the war. Some people will benefit. Some are selling AK-47, importing them. Some guns, some Uza, some, rocket-propelled grenades, some all sorts of uniform, boots, just name it. Some people enjoy this kind of a thing. But for God's sake, let us ensure that whether they are bandits or terrorists or whatever so-called, we should be able to dominate, conquer them, and let Nigerians begin to have the peace that we used to have. So it's nice that Nigerians should support, honestly, the military.
All right. Now, one of the stories of interest you would find is that about internally generated revenue. Lagos State leads as FCT beats Rivers, Kano, 33 others as far as revenue generation is concerned. This is a good news, isn't it? As against what many people have said, well, the FCT is not really a commercially viable city.
Honestly, the face of FCT is changing. And if you look at the informal sector of the economy, some women having some shops here and there, Some men are running some restaurants here and there. I mean, they constitute the informal sector of the Nigerian economy, and it is booming very well. If you also check, virtually every area council, they have these shopping malls, have these markets, and mostly they go to collect some market rates here and there. So money is being, I mean, they are generating money for the government. But again, you also look at the huge infrastructure that is available in the Abuja market. The roads are good. But I'm not yet talking about the ones into the small towns here and there in FCT. By the way, the FCT minister ought to, by now, he ought to have a kind of open up some new districts, because they've stayed that long. And we also expect that the road around Akpo Legislative Quarters, Mechanic Village, up to that big hill down there, what's the name of the village? You see, if you open up that place, the kind of foodstuff that also enter this Abuja, buying and selling will be the end thing. You look at the hotels, they are booming in this country. Look at the taxi business here and there, they all are booming. Therefore, it follows that since the influx of the people is there, and you also have businesses going on, and government is following with some taxation, of course, the IGR will follow. But for other states that are not doing very well, especially in the north and some eastern part of Nigeria, the central part of this country, quite a lot needs to be done. Infrastructure, for example, they need it. They need it and they need it. So government should not just be paying just salaries and all that stuff. No. And again, there's a limit as to how state governments will even interfere in just running of markets. I mean, why will a state government, you are in the capital city over there, you're rushing to go build some markets in local government? That is the job of a local government. Because when you look at tiers of government, you still have the local government, you have the state, you have the local government, I mean the federal government. And when it comes to exclusive legislative list, that's where the federal government will be in charge at making of currency, for example, the military, the police, they all are within the purview of the federal government, and that's why it is exclusively for the federal government. And when you have the concurrent, of course, like the universities, you can have universities, private will have, state government will have, federal will have, and that's why they are concurrent. Everybody can join in there. But there are things you call residual. These residual laws, they are for the local government. Market, for example, running of graveyards, for example, all sorts of building of gutters. But why would the state government, when they share money from Abuja here, you're now going to dump the money into a single treasury account, and from there, the local government chairman is not even allowed to touch the money. At the point we're hearing, it's alleged that some states even do the vouchers for local government staff at the state quarters of a state. And so if you do all of this, therefore, you see that the local governments are left out without anything. But if you leave the state governments, the local governments with their money, of course, the IGR will increase. And I want to say that I've seen that Governor Suleva of Nasarawa State, he's saying that, look, he just swore in some local government chairman and said, you are going to have your autonomy, financial and all that stuff. And if they do all of that, you see, they'll go into forestry. Forestry, therefore, you go into farming, cashew, you have coconut, you have all sorts of things that will assist there. You go into other things like agriculture, farming, fish farming, dry season farming. They all will be there. Poultry and all that.
All right. By virtue of the location of the FCT and the states neighboring the FCT, do you think that there are things we are not doing to make sure that these kind of success is achieved in the neighboring states? What advantage does the FCT gives these neighboring states to also boost their own revenue?
Yeah, number one, if you check, I doubt if there is anywhere that the Nasarawa state government makes money more than the boundary from Nyanya to Sharp Corner, Masaka, Ado. The kind of building material that is taken, market that is there, is it cement, the banking industry and all that, and the population, those working in Abuja, they live in that place. And when you are filling your tax form, you feel and pay to where you live. So you see, many people who live in Abuja and work in Abuja, they pay their tax to contiguous states. You pay to Niger State. You pay to element of Kaduna State. You pay to Nasarawa State. You pay to Kogi. You pay to Niger. And so that around. So there are things they have to they benefit from many of these things. And sometimes when people want to sell things a bit higher, they leave these contiguous states and come into Abuja. Yam will come in from Nasarawa State, come from Niger. You see them in Abuja. Is it the ginger? They're coming in from Kaduna State. So having a boundary or living in as a contiguous neighbor to FCT is an advantage. Because it in terms of communication, selling, buying, and of course, it's an advantage that they have to share.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning.
Spent indeed.
Yes, really. We hope to have you again on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yes.